Before Walmart, Target, and Best Buy, there was Sears. For decades, it was the go-to department store. The socks on your feet, the couch in your living room, the washing machine that cleaned your family's clothes. You could find Sears items in just about every household. These days, though, the company is trying to keep its head above water. Foot traffic and sales are way down. Billions of dollars have been lost, thousands of jobs cut, dozens of stores shuttered. Now in Canada, there's a new boss, the retailer's fifth one in 5 years. And she's determined to find the softer side of Sears that once gave its Canadian retail star status. Carrie Kirkman is a retail veteran and leader in women's wear. Kirkman kicked off her career developing iconic brands like DKNY and Kenneth Cole. Later, she took on senior roles at Hudson's Bay Company and Liz Claiborne Canada. She held the position of Jones Apparel Group president for several years, then became interim president of shoe retailer Nine West Canada. Now she's just 1 month into her new gig as president of Sears Canada. The company also calls her chief merchant, a new position created just for Kirkman. I started our conversation asking about that new title and what it means.
I think it speaks a ton to Sears' focus right now on product and where we believe the opportunities are for us to win in the marketplace right now. It requires a different kind of focus and I think a level of attention and expertise at the highest level in the company on product.
So is that mostly your background then in picking the merchandise line for the companies you've worked at before?
I mean, you could say that's part of it. I think it's more about the strategy, identifying opportunity, understanding how to connect the brand, called the brand of Sears in this case, with our key consumers and figuring out how to re-engineer a strategy that is going to be more interesting and more engaging for those targeted consumers.
So you haven't been in the role that long, but I'm sure you do have something you can share with us in terms of what is the opportunity? What will the strategy be?
Sure. I would say that we clearly have identified a white space in the market. For a long time, there were a lot of people playing, I'm going to call it in the moderate zone in Canada. And it was a very difficult space because Sears was completely dominating that space. There were off-price retailers that were in that channel and other department stores that were trading in that exact same space. So to move to a new space doesn't happen overnight. That takes a couple of years for, first of all, strategy to be articulated and then to execute against it and move an organization. So what's happened is the market actually had to try and find its own white space back then, away from this populated zone of moderate. And the whole market seems to have moved and
gone where?
Upscale, I think. And it's not necessarily a place where I believe there is the size of opportunity.
But, you know, for years I've been hearing retail analysts say, you know, the middle is the worst place to be.
Right.
You know, that there's great opportunities in the high end, you know, and we see Saks is coming in and Nordstrom and the Bay has the Room and so forth and Holtz is expanding and so forth. And then at the bottom, you know, you've got your Walmart and your Costco and even, you know, your Zara, H&M, those types. And that really, it's very, very difficult for anyone to be in the middle. And it sounds like that's what you're saying, where you're going to be.
So, first of all, I don't actually believe that there is this difficulty in resonating in that particular zone for a couple of reasons. I think how you define the middle, first of all, is very open for interpretation. You could argue that there are other department stores that a vast majority of their business is actually the middle, not where we're trading.
Like who? Who would it be in the middle?
There is another department store in Canada that we could argue would be focused exactly a little bit more on the middle. Whereas we are looking at a position that connects to really the hearts of Canadians. And that is not an intimidating price point. That is not necessarily about a specific price point, but it is a zone because certain categories of business that we sell we have luxury product for those categories of business. So it's really about identifying how we believe the heart of Canada shops, their values and their experience. So it's very difficult to pinhole things. You could argue that at the low end and the value end of the market was not very successful for another retailer who came in. They're not middle. They're
Target
at the, right.
was,
They're at the
yes.
mass end of it. So I think it's easy for people to just try and say, you know, this is where all the action is. I would be much more cautious and concerned about how overpopulated another part of the market is about to become.
Right.
And I'm fine with that. I actually think Canada can well support 3 clear tiers of retail.
So now, before we started rolling here,
Sure.
we were talking about how you've developed a little bit of a reputation of being a fixer, someone who does come into chains and brands that need a bit of an overhaul.
Right.
Tell us a bit about that.
Sure. It's something I'm very passionate about. I've never really been a lover of just being an operator as such. The idea of taking on something a little bit more complex and figuring out how to unlock value is really something that motivates me. And when I was presented with the opportunity to join Sears, it was to me a huge honor and almost the culmination of 30 years of my retail career, building the skill set required to understand how to do that for a really beloved brand in Canada.
So what has gone wrong for Sears in your view?
It's a complicated question, certainly. I can say that it is very easy, I think, when you have been a very dominant and very powerful retailer for 50 years, to understand a certain way to operate in a marketplace that has consistently delivered a successful outcome. And I think that when the market undergoes a transformation, it's a struggle sometimes to think differently, do differently, behave differently, which is really where I feel like I come in. So first woman to lead this company in 50 years, which I'm very proud to be in that place. And I think it's a focus, again, on how to be different, how to be relevant, and how to connect in a more authentic way with the Canadian consumer.
I want to hear more about your plans, but I just have to ask you one other point about sort of the hard times.
Sure.
And that is just this criticism that's been leveled against Edward Lampert, the American owner, that he's treated Sears Canada almost like his personal ATM was one of the criticisms I saw, that, you know, money gets sucked out and given to American shareholders as opposed to being reinvested in the brand in Canada. And of course, we've seen these lawsuits also that are coming out from some of the sort of franchisees, the home stores of Sears, saying exactly that, saying, why are we being left sort of hung out to dry with all this money being sent to American shareholders? What's your view on that?
Dividends are controlled by a board of directors. Canada is a separate company that has its own board of directors, and that decision ultimately is made by a board of directors. What I can tell you is that I am confident that I have the resources that I need to deliver on what I need to get done, and that's really the focus for me and the opportunity. We have what we need in terms of resources to manage our stores beautifully. We spend almost $2 billion a year on open to buy in the marketplace. There's no shortage of resources to do what we need to do.
So what are customers going to see? What difference will they see in Sears?
I'm hoping that they're going to see an evolution of an experience in a store that is going to feel easier to connect to, more relevant for them.
What does that mean, though? Like, how do you connect to it or look more relevant?
Well, I think that if you walk into many of our stores today, you might experience a confusing message. Less clarity on the floor, perhaps inventory levels too high, not as easy to navigate. There are many opportunities to create a more enjoyable shopping environment, and I think it's that connection. First of all, just cleaning up the message in our stores, managing our inventory levels differently, and focusing and editing in such a way that a consumer will walk in and feel like this is my department store to shop at. And there's a million tactics that go underneath that statement, but in the end, it's really very basic, is that we have to be a place where a Canadian consumer is going to want to go to satisfy all of the needs that she has for her life.
More youthful brands? Is that kind of what you're talking about as well?
So, I mean, as a 52-year-old woman, I could tell you that I don't believe that women actually move past probably about 38 in their mind, regardless of what their
I would
calendar
go along with
age is. Exactly. So I think that understanding how the different styles of women need to be addressed. I don't believe it's an age or just a particular brand or position, but really understanding, connecting to a female consumer in such a way.
Is it women that you're really focusing on that much?
Not, so what I'd like to say is it's not to exclude men by any means. What we do know is that women control the vast majority of the spend in families. And that's just a reality. That's not to say that we don't love our male customers and welcome them completely to our stores. But the reality is almost 75% of our customer base are women between the ages of 35 and 65. So when we speak about our women, our female customer, it's really that to be a successful department store in Canada, you have to win with women for that reason alone.
Well, you've got a big job ahead of you, Carrie.
And I am up for it.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.